everyone, and welcome to the Law and Legacy podcast. I'm your host, Mufaro Chitakunye, and today we're going to delve into a conversation that sits at the heart of Zimbabwe's future: generational wealth, the business leader's view. And to help me unpack this topic, I have with me a visionary, a business leader, a banker, an entrepreneur, Mr. Chanakira. Welcome, sir, to the Law and Legacy podcast.
Thank you, Mfaro, for having me. What a pleasure to discuss this very important topic.
It is. Just to begin with, this term generational wealth. What does the term generational wealth mean to you?
Well, for me, it speaks volumes. It's the capacity to pass wealth on to future generations. And normally we have a founder, say, of a business. And if he is able to pass it on to his children, we call that second generational transfer of wealth. And then better still, to the third and fourth generation. And being a Christian, I think the Bible emphasizes, the fact that a wise man is one who can pass wealth on to his children's children. Not necessarily financial wealth, but also wisdom. And so for me, it is precisely that. And we see it mainly in chieftainships, in kingdoms, and then, of course, in the Western world and Eastern world, who have a longer capacity in terms of documented history. They've been able to pass on wealth to their children, and we hear of strong families that have been able to do so.
Yeah. That's a brilliant answer. And like you said, from the Bible says that. But we see that across Africa, we have brilliant entrepreneurs building remarkable businesses. Yet we see that we are failing to transfer our wealth to the second generation. No, usually the wealth is stuck on the first generation. Why do you think African wealth and businesses rarely outlive their founders?
Well, I think first and foremost, we've got to be fair, Mufaro. The first thing that we must know is that for any business to last beyond 5 to 10 years is no mean feat itself. Because on average, 1 out of 10 of every 10 businesses that are started actually collapse. And so entrepreneurship by its nature is risky. That's the first point. The second point I would like to make is that in terms of modern businesses, we as Africans are fairly new in terms of the Western standards of understanding business. And so it would appear that our failure rates are statistically high. But I venture to say that give us time, because some of us, for example, in my case, I am a second generational businessman in the sense that my dad and his brothers were pioneers in the field of business. But they didn't necessarily pass on their businesses to me. I started my own businesses in the banking and financial services space, and then also in the education, coaching, and mentoring space. So in a sense, I'm a pioneer, but the truth be told, my dad is still alive, and he started shops with his brothers. His shop is still running, and I maintain that he will probably pass it on to me, and I can pass it on to my sons. And already we would be debunking that myth that Africans are not able to pass on businesses. But we simply just haven't been there long enough, to know. But we do know, of course, that there are businesses that are begun by an individual. And of course, those businesses have died with those individuals. And we know many an African or Zimbabwean businessman that started, my great uncle started Modern Express buses, and those buses are no longer there. Okay? And there's a whole litany, Rutendo, Matambanadzo, in that generation. Those people were pioneers, but unfortunately, the business died with the individual. And the family didn't choose or opt to carry on with that business. Some moved on. You know, we're in a generation where I know my cousins emigrated to the United States of America. So there were no children when my uncle passed on who carried on with that business. So it is a fact, and what we need, obviously, is to develop a culture of multi-generational businesses. And if we can do that with the assistance of the work that you're doing, then certainly those legacies will be built and will be more successful and close that gap that is evident.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Mr. Chanakira. But we see that even with legal tools like trusts and wills and business succession plans, wealth and businesses still collapse despite those structures. What governance or planning gaps do you think are more critical?
So, Mufaro, it starts off with education. What is a trust? Many African families don't know that. And what is the purpose of the trust? You know, to be able to pass it on to generations. So I think it begins with education. It begins, I guess, information first, and then the quest and yearning for education. Beyond that, I think we need training to actually show people the advantages of wills and trusts and the benefits that can accrue to all the stakeholders. I think once we are in there, in that mode, then we can have examples and mentors who can display that and be able to pass that on. And so in my particular case, I am an executor of a trust or a will that my uncle left me, and I've been made an executor on several family wills. And in that process, I've had to clue myself up as an investment banker to understand my responsibilities. My responsibilities, whether it is through a trust or a will that's being executed, must speak to the tenets of what that trust seeks to establish. And I've been made a trustee. I've also learned to draw up my own trust and have my wishes extended and embedded within that trust. But I think what's more important is not only that knowledge, that training, that exposure, it's the experience of administering such a trust and then passing on that knowledge to the next generation. So my own children, as you offered, Mufaro, to embed those family tenets into what is normally what I call a dry will or a dry trust, which comes pretty standard. And you can drop those off the internet. But you want to add value, your values to be incorporated within that family trust so that it can be passed on to future generations. I think there's an advantage as well, because many of us as Africans don't even want to discuss death. We don't even want to look at the eventualities of, my, as a founder, passing on for numerous fears.
Yes.
That, I lose control, I cease to be in charge, or I lose my wealth in the process. But truthfully, what would be a wise model, as we've been learning over the years, or I've learned over the years, is to incorporate my kids into my business and show and tell rather than tell and show. And if we are able to do that, I think we will then perpetuate a culture of successful wills and trusts that allow multi-generational wealth, to be accessed.
Wow, brilliant. I like that you touched on passing on values. And it brings me to my next question that traditionally African families had mutupo totems, shared values guiding identity, decision making, and cohesion. Do you think that this cultural foundation has been lost in modern business families?
I think sometimes we tend to buy into other cultures other than our own. And for us, I guess colonialism, shaped who some of us are today. So we then take on Western values and we lose our traditions and our cultures. And as a result, we see and attribute very little value to Mutupo. But if we care to know what Mutupo is more to do with tribe, is to do actually very prudently with avoiding marriage within the families. And biologically, it's been proven that, if you marry amongst yourselves, amongst your family members, the genetics don't do too well. And as a result, Mutupo's origins appear for our culture to actually have been extended to the point where we didn't marry amongst ourselves, we identified cultures, we identified languages, and therefore were able to pass on that to our children, making sure that you didn't marry your own sister, for example, which within itself is incest when we go according to the Bible. And if you follow the Bible as keenly as I do, those tribes, the children of Jacob, by which the tribes were actually named, was a way of Mutupo, in a sense. If we talk of the children of Ishmael, the children of Joseph's children, etc., etc., it goes on that way. And they followed particular traditions and particular rituals. And in the process, they were then able to pass not only those rituals, but to also pass on the wealth to that lineage and the bloodline. And so it should be for us. We should be able to follow such patterns so that we don't lose our identities and we also maintain generational wealth with an element of pride rather than to go across culture and lose our identity as Africans or indeed Zimbabweans, or in my case, as a Zezuru Chanakira, family member.
Yes, absolutely. All right. We also see that most children in general, after the founder has done all the groundwork, they are not even interested in continuing the family business, even where structures exist. Why do you think this is, and how can families, especially African families, do better to engage the next generation?
So obviously, if you follow generational wealth where it's been strong, the Rothschilds, a banking culture, the Fords, the motor vehicle industry, those were strong, successful business people. And so where we identify strong, successful Zimbabwean or African business people, I think the onus is on those founders to make sure that they pass on a heritage onto their children. I'll give you an example, Mfaro. I am into banking and financial services. It's a passion for me. I am also into mentorship and education and business and consultancy and advisory services. So, what have I intentionally done? I made sure that for all my children, in the school holidays, if they wanted jobs, there would be jobs available within the banking institutions or within the franchises that I own. That was a way of introducing them into the business. I was also keen to investigate their keenness, their energy for specific activities and play them to their strengths. So as a result, my oldest son took a fancy and interest in banking. And so today I still work with him in that area of banking and financial services. It's in line with his interests and his passion. My second son, like you, took an interest and passion in law. But although he did that, I still asked him when he graduated to work with me for a period so that he would understand what I did while he was still, hunting for a job.
Yes.
And so he became accustomed to what I do. I've also set up a business similar to here where he is domiciled. And I ask him to oversee the affairs of my business, although he's not directly involved. But guess what? Where we need financial legal advice, guess who is the first one we turn to? We turn to him so that we can be working together somewhat. When I look for clients in that domicile where he is abroad, again, I do the same. I have a daughter in New York. She's an actor. And guess what? When she graduated, although she didn't graduate with anything that had anything to do with what I did, she still served time with me and spent a couple of months learning the ropes of what we do. Now, because she's a communication expert, guess where we use her? She, as an actor, is an excellent communicator. So we've got a program called Effective Communication, which is useful for people in the business arena. Guess who coaches the communication? We rope her in. Similarly, because she now lectures and coaches people in banking, it's an area of commonality. So she teaches bankers in New York how to speak and how to, do presentations. And so in the process, we are utilizing her skill to still be embedded in the core business that her father does. Are we together?
Yes.
My third son, on the other hand, is a marketing specialist and a sportsman. But still, I roped him in. When he graduated, he did work for me for a couple of months and then went overseas, started marketing. And when he came back, I said, all my marketing activities are now your responsibility. So his responsibility is to develop his art and science of marketing within our business. And then we gave him other activities to do. So you can see how intentional I've been in incorporating my kids into our business. My wife, on the other hand, is into property and investments. And so guess what? When she is buying property, the financial side, she looks to us to help her structure her deals. She looks to her son to help with the legalities of that. And so we are intentionally incorporating them in the business. Now, if I'm doing that, Mufaro can do that with her children for her legal business and so on and so forth. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does, Mr. Chanakira. The last question that I have for you, I need your thoughts on the family constitution. What do you think? Do you think it will help in addressing some of those issues that we're having in Zimbabwe, in Africa, in terms of passing on generational wealth? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a great initiative because those family values become established, they become documented alongside the wealth of the family. And so I believe that I made reference earlier on to the dryness of the basic will and the basic trust deeds that are being formulated. They come standard.
Yes.
And I think the family constitution adds a flavor which brings identity and a longing to preserve the heritage of the family. And so I think it's a marvelous idea, and I'm looking forward to you giving me counsel on my own family constitution in addition to my will and of course my trust deed.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and it's such an honor to have you. We hope to have you again.
It was my privilege, and I hope that your listeners and people who watch this program will listen very carefully and take counsel, because based on my experience, a lot of our wealth, a lot of our values, a lot of our legacies are being lost in the process simply because we haven't legally documented them. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.